Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's lecture on crime scene notes and reports, which is Chapter 8 in your textbook. So, as usual, these are our learning objectives for this specific chapter, and they can be used as a study tool and just to gauge your understanding of everything that we're covering throughout this lecture. So as a refresher, the 6 crime scene activities in their basic order is assessing, observing, documenting, searching, collecting, and analyzing. This week, we are continuing our focus on documenting. So to reiterate, when it comes to documentation, the 4 key elements are notes, photographs, sketches, and reports. Each is important in their own respective ways, supporting and adding value to each other. Our focus for this lecture is going to be notes and reports, thereby finishing our documentation series of lectures. So there are 2 basic documents that explicate a narrative for the investigation, that being our notes and reports. Our notes are the detailed description that provides explicit observations and actions that you and other investigators took while on scene processing. The report is a summarized version of everyone's, if applicable, compiled notes. So regardless of whether you're recording your notes or writing your report, the narrative must be comprised of 3 attributes. It must be detailed, it must be accurate, and it must be understandable. These narratives have to be able to describe pertinent details, be representative of the true conditions and actions taken at the scene, and written in a manner that whosoever reads the document can articulate exactly what happened at the scene. So your notes on scene are the record of actions taken, either those that you performed or those that others performed. Like I've said in this lecture and other lectures related to documentation, everything supports each other. But if there's anything that must be articulated best, it is the actions you have taken at the scene. That means every action, whether positive or negative instances, must be documented. Let's say you find an item of evidence. You document the time it was found, who found it, where it was found, what time it was marked as evidence, what evidence marker it was given, and who marked it as evidence. In addition to when it was moved, collected, what time that occurred, who collected it, and who packaged it. That also means if an item of evidence or something on scene was altered, you're recording what time it happened, who did it, and what exactly happened. So in an example, here are some investigative notes that have been taken by different persons at the same scene. We can see that, all right, began dining room note taking 09:20 hours because we are also working in 24-hour time. So we see start south corner of room, china cabinet with 2 doors and 2 drawers at bottom, southwest wall, left door slightly ajar, 3 shelves containing various cups and pottery, 4 glass alcohol bottles sitting on top of cabinet. So we're going through and talking about each of the different events that we're seeing, each of the different items that we're seeing, all of our observations, all of our actions taken. So we can see what another examiner was saying. Okay, 15:10 hours, CSI Fagan turned on bedroom light. 15:11 hours, CSI Fagan turned off bedroom light. 15:13 hours, red brown footwear impression, marker Q. And this is placed by that examiner specifically. 15:15 hours, turn on bedroom lights. 15:17 hours, CSI Yonker, turn on bathroom, hallway, and dining room lights. So we're going through and we're talking about even the smallest of details, whether you opened a blind, closed a blind, whether you opened a door, closed a door, things like that. We are being very explicit as to what was going on, who was doing what at the scene, what time things were occurring. So then the notes that we have made have to make it into the reports, but these notes don't get written down verbatim in the report. They have to be compiled from everyone on scene, if applicable, because sometimes it might just be us that is working a scene, and then condensed to summarize the actions taken. The report is where you have the most organization to ensure it's understandable and easily digestible for any viewer. So in this example, all right, in the dining room, the ceiling was unremarkable, meaning there was nothing of evidentiary value on the ceiling. We looked, we didn't find anything. In the north corner, specifically, it was unremarkable. The northeast wall. So what we're noting here, moving from north to east, right? We don't want to necessarily say right to left, because if I'm facing you, my right is different from your right, okay? So we have to be as explicit as possible. So we're saying, okay, moving from the north to the east, rather than saying moving from right to left. We're saying there's a fire extinguisher, a thermostat, archway, light switch, and photo frame on the wall. Below the photo frame is an outlet to which there is a lamp plugged in. East corner, speaker on ceiling. So we're going through and we're talking about each of these very specific things that we're seeing, whether they hold evidentiary value or not. We're just trying to represent what the scene could look like. Because maybe that fire extinguisher, that thermostat, that archway, that light switch leads us into something else within the scene. We just haven't gotten to that point in our report yet. Now, there are a couple of ways that we can document all of this information. We can leave it as bullet points like what we see here, or we can write it as a narrative paragraph form. Bullet points are always easiest just to follow, understand. It's easy to flow through, be like, okay, all right, we hit all of these points, but a narrative paragraph is also an acceptable form, and it's going to depend jurisdiction to jurisdiction as to how they want their reports written. So as another example, all right, so now we're in the bathroom. At 0911 hours, CSI Fagan turned on the lights in the bathroom. CSI Fagan noticed that the bathroom sink faucet was dripping. 12:48 hours, CSI McMillan reopened bathroom door. 16:18 hours, knife found in bathroom cabinet near the window. CSI McMillan discovered. So we're going through, we're talking about all of these things that we're finding, that we're seeing, that we're doing, that we're placing on scene, whether positive or negative. So when it comes to organizing your crime scene report, it should exist in functional parts. A general report format breakdown is as follows, but no, this isn't a hard and fast organization standard for crime scene reports. Again, each jurisdiction is going to have different expectations and formatting requirements. So going into this general format, we have our introduction first, characteristics, the conditions, the environmental conditions of the scene, the factors pertinent to entry and exit, your scene documentation, and then any search for latent prints and additional examinations performed. So going through a breakdown of what the crime scene report organization looks like, we start with the introduction. So here we are identifying who's conducting the examination, time, date, the specific location being examined, what's our case number, and all of that briefing information that we care about. So we say between 1400 hours and 2335 hours on 10 January 2021, Detective Smith and Hansen conducted an examination of a homicide scene located at the specific location, the address, whether it was outdoors and what the longitude, latitude coordinates are for that, stuff like that. So then we're going into the characteristics of the scene. So these are the static and stable conditions of the scene that you want to record, describing those general features like building, room layout, furniture, doors, windows, all of that jazz. So what this can look like, apartment 3A is in a fourplex brick apartment building. The apartment is located on the northwest corner and consists of 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a living room, and a kitchen. So we're going through, we're specifying all of those details that we're seeing so we can paint a picture of what the scene looked like when we arrived there on scene. So for the conditions of the scene, you're describing the specific conditions and aspects of the scene, whether it was clean, whether it was in disarray, and then a detailed description of all items of evidence. So there's a white male, approximately 20 to 25 years old, laying in a prone position in the center of the living room. His right hand is extended up and toward the northwest, palm down. His left hand is beneath his body. Now, I know I said we're not saying rights and lefts, but when we are talking about a person, we are talking about their right hand. We're talking about their left hand. Not if I'm looking at you, this is your right, this is your left. It is specifically as that person, their right hand, their left hand, their right foot, their left foot. So then we're going into our environmental conditions. So we're describing the general weather conditions and any scene-specific conditions noted. So at the time of the examination, the exterior temperature was noted at 52 degrees Fahrenheit. The apartment thermostat was set at 88 degrees Fahrenheit, and the interior conditions were dry and hot. A light rain was falling on arrival. So then we're going to be updating the environmental conditions, especially for the longer that we are on scene. So let's say we started processing a scene at 1500 hours, and we're still processing that scene at 0300 hours. Maybe it got foggy. Maybe it started to dew in the morning. We're making sure we're noting these changes as they are occurring because the environment is never going to stay static and stable. So then we're going to discuss the factors pertinent to entry and exit. This will likely require some type of inference on your part because you have to have had an idea of where a perpetrator entered and exited the scene in order to discuss the explicit details for these locations. So we might say there's a single entry door to the apartment. The locking mechanism was a standard deadbolt, showing no evidence of prior damage. The door was locked, stuff like that. So then we have our scene documentation. We're going to describe efforts taken by the crime scene investigators to document the condition of the scene. So a rough crime scene sketch was prepared by Detective Smith, as well as an evidence measurement log. Photographs were exposed of the scene by Detective Hansen using a 35mm Nikon SLR camera and 400 ASA color film. A total of 4 rolls of film were used, things like that. And then going through the collection of evidence process. So if a separate evidence log is created, this is a summary discussion of major items of interest. If not, it's going to detail the items recovered from the scene. So between 1917 hours and 2200 hours, the following items were recovered in the scene. 4 latent prints recovered from the coffee tabletop surface. We're explicitly stating the things that we have observed, recovered, marked, collected, all of that. So in like our more specific additional examination sections, like a search for latent fingerprints, it's going to describe all on-scene fingerprint recovery techniques. So a brush and powder examination was made of the door and door frame. The interior handle was superglued and then dusted. This resulted in the recovery of several latent prints. The coffee table was examined using ALS and fluorescent powder, resulting in the recovery of several additional prints, including. So we're specifically stating what exactly we did on scene. We're not just saying we lifted 4 fingerprints from the coffee table. How did you do that? How did you find them? Where did you find them? We have to be explicit in what we're doing. And then moving on to our additional exams, this section is going to describe other examinations like bloodstain pattern analysis, trajectory analysis, impression casting, things like that. And each area can also be broken down into subsections like what we did with latent fingerprints. Now, while all of the examples that I've provided have been summary paragraphs, again, it is also acceptable to list the information in bullet points because this can be an easier way to follow the flow of information. This, again, will be jurisdiction dependent as different places have different requirements and expectations for their reports. So what we're also going to be talking about are the negative attributes of scene reports. Given everything pertinent to good crime scene reports, again, we have to talk about what we do not want to see. So it shouldn't be used, the crime scene report, as a place for you to make a cursory discussion of central theme items in the scene with no other details. It is not your job to weigh what evidence is important or not. Merely document the evidence that is there, your observations and actions taken in regard to that evidence. All right, so it also shouldn't be used to discuss the guilt of a suspect because that is not your job as the crime scene investigator. You are there to process the scene, not add in your own interpretations and bias as to who's done it. It also shouldn't be used to make a one-sided description of evidence, either because evidence is going to be exculpatory or inculpatory, right? You are not biasing your investigation as a CSI to say this person is guilty, this person is not. Evidence is evidence. Let the evidence tell the story, not you. So you should never preclude evidence from processing just because it supports one hypothesis versus another. Again, that is not your job. Your job is to remain objective, unbiased. Let the scene, let the evidence speak for itself as you process. Let that guide your way of thinking, your train of thought, give you an impression of what occurred at the scene. It doesn't mean that you're identifying who's done it. You're making that discussion of why that person is guilty, and you are only discussing the central theme items and the only pieces of evidence that you think connect to that. All evidence is evidence, okay? All right, now with that, that ends our chapter 8 discussion and rounds us out on our documentation portion of the 6 basic crime scene activities. See you in the next one. And if you guys have any questions, as always, email me.